Hello and welcome to this final lesson of the summer series of 2022. It is very exciting that you're here. Maybe it's not your first, maybe you've seen all 8 in the sequence, then I hope you will enjoy this one just the way you did the past lessons. And if it's your first time, welcome as well. Great to have you online. And of course, you sign up for it, and it is the analytics lesson. We have some real experts in the house with us today. I'll introduce them to you shortly. The lesson is called Analytics, Stop Ignoring the Results of Your Content. And we'll soon share with you the content we go over. But before we do, I have a question to you. What was your biggest challenge when analyzing the results of your latest Foleon Doc? So take your latest Foleon Doc to mind and ask yourself, what did you struggle with? What did you have as a difficulty or a frustration, or kind of like what did you run into that now also makes you interested in joining this live lesson? So even if you're just logging in, jump on your keyboard and let us know what was your biggest challenge, or maybe what is in general when you analyze your Foleon Docs. We're very curious to hear, so type it in the chat and we'll go over it very soon. In the meantime, I give you some time to type and I will bring our guest speakers to stage. Here we are, Veronica and Giel. Welcome to this live lesson. Very exciting to have you both on board. Giel, maybe first off, who are you? What are you doing at Foleon? Could you share something about yourself?
Yeah, of course, Lopke. Nice to be here. My name is Giel de Leeuw. I'm a product analyst at Foleon, which means I help the product team analyze the product, how it's being used, and how we can improve it. And before that, I worked at the marketing team also at Foleon, and also in that role, I analyzed Foleon Docs. So I hope to share some knowledge with you today.
That's great. Yeah, I'm really looking forward to it particularly. Also, we have Veronica in the house online with us. So just for the context, Giel is in the Netherlands working from home. It's amazing summer weather though, so it's fairly feeling quite warm right now. But also we have Veronica online. Veronica, welcome from New York. Could you introduce yourself?
Hi, everybody. So I'm one of the customer success managers here at Foleon. As Lopke mentioned, I am on our US team, and I work with a bunch of our customers to ensure that they're getting the most of our product.
That's great. Thank you for being here. We have 2 speakers online to ask your question to, is because this is a technical topic, but maybe your question isn't that technical. And Veronica, as a customer success manager, is the person to answer your questions. So just also to let you know, we're super happy to receive your questions. Feel free to let them know to the 3 of us. We're your panel today in the chat. And maybe as a final introduction, my name is Lopke Bijman. I'm the customer education manager for Foleon, and I have been hosting the summer series this summer. And it's great to have you online. Just to quickly go back to the question we asked you, think back to your latest Foleon Doc. What was your biggest challenge when analyzing the results? Feel free to let us know by typing your answer in the chat. Then you immediately know where the chat function is. And also you can let us know what your struggles are, what your frustrations are, as then afterwards we can see, have we answered them, or have we do we maybe have some more work to do to solve them for you? So let us know, please. That would be amazing. And on the same note, of course, you're here to learn about analytics. So let's get started with the lesson. Veronica, Giel, are you ready for it? Cool.
Definitely.
Nice. I hope everyone is. I'm going to start our session. Enjoy.
Let's dive right into our topics for today. We'll be discussing Foleon Analytics and Google Analytics, also known FA and GA. We'll be talking about how they can use together to get the content insights that you need, how we can measure the performance of your doc. So let's start with Foleon Analytics. It's based on our in-house analytics engine, and it's added automatically to your docs. We've noticed that GA can be quite overwhelming for new users, and Foleon Analytics was our answer to help you get the quick insights that you need. If you are familiar with Google Analytics, you can use it to go all in. You can see how people discover and engage with your content. You can add it through the project settings in Foleon. It will be automatically added through all the docs that are in there. If you have docs in there that were already published before that change, you have to make sure to republish those as well. Let's dive into measuring the performance of a doc. And first, I'd like to take us back to the structure of your doc. It's one of the first editorial choices you have to make. And you have to make that choice based on the goal of your doc. Is it a great story from page 1 to 10? And do you need your users or your readers to read every page? For example, a white paper or an ebook where you educate your readers on a specific pain, a market trend, and then slowly build up to a solution, probably your solution. Or do you have a content that's interesting for some but not for others? So for example, a market report across hundreds of industries. A reader that might only read the content about the industry that they are interested in. Heavily depends the structure of your content and the editorial choices you have to make there. And it also decides how you want to measure success. Let's go a bit deeper into that as well. So for linear docs, you look up probably at the total number of user sessions. So what's the size of the readers that I have? How many sessions do we have per user? In other words, how often are they coming back? We look at the performance of the cover page because this is most likely the place where they start. This also depends on your strategy regarding distribution, of course, but most likely in these types of docs, they will start on the cover page. So then you can look at the entrances, the exit rate and the bounce rate. You could see how many drop off basically, but do they know what to do, how to get to the next page, for example. Another great way of looking at this is what I call depth of visits or depth of sessions in terms of GA language. You basically look at the page and then calculate percentage of sessions that visited that page. We'll go into an example soon. And for nonlinear docs, we see similar types of indicators or metrics, but the main difference is that we look at a page level and not on a doc level. So we want to see on a page level which page had good or bad engagement. Also here, depth of visit is quite a good way of analyzing your doc. One of our own docs that we use at Foleon, so the Foleon Getting Started Guide. It's basically our guide to how to use our platform, and an interactive way of learning the platform. The start, you can see that this is a somewhat linear doc, but it's also focused as a non-linear doc, as I can choose which page is interesting for me to read. Here we can learn more about specific parts of a doc. If we want to analyze this one as a linear doc, we'll look at Foleon Analytics of this one. So for this time frame, we have a nice graph of the users, the visitors in our Foleon language. Then we have a bar that displays the unique visitors, the number of doc visits, which is related to the number of sessions in Google Analytics. Then the pages per visit, the visit time, and the bounce rate. Then we have the visitors, the devices. So do we have new visitors mostly or returning visitors? And what are they using to open the doc? And mostly in our case, it's desktop, which is good to know because we can also make some editorial choices there. And then lastly, we have an overview of all the page metrics. So page visits, unique visits, the time spent on each page, the bounce rate and the exit rate. So let's go through analytics first, and let's just spend a bit of time on familiar with the platform. Reports, we're in the audience report, and then we're at the overview side. I created a specific segment for our doc, and we also have a time frame from last month. So what do we see? We see basically a similar report as in our analytics. So we see number of users, number of new users, sessions, sessions per user, page views, number of pages per session, the average session duration, and the bounce rate. This you can also get from Foleon Analytics, but once you go to the other reports, the acquisition report and content engagement, you can see that you can get a lot more information from Google Analytics. First go to the audience report still, and then go to mobile overview. And then we can see in Google Analytics what the percentage of desktop is and the percentage of mobile. And as you can see, it's still 98, 99% for desktop. Let's go to the second tab, which is the acquisition tab. This is where there's a difference between Foleon Analytics and Google Analytics, because in Google Analytics, we can now discover where people are finding our content. So are they coming from an email campaign? Are they finding the doc directly through typing it in the bar? Or are they referred from any site? Or do they find it from organic search? And you can click any of those to get a bit more information about channel grouping. So this is referral, so we can see where they are coming from, where are they being referred from. And here you can see that the source is our site, but also a learning session that we did, another site, and also emails. In the same overview, acquisition and campaigns, we have all campaigns. And this is where you would see your UTM parameters, for example. So a campaign, what we did is system emails. So those are emails sent by our system. And then we can also add, for example, the UTM source. And this is a good way of finding how people find your content. But it also requires you to set up the UTM strings in each time you distribute a doc. And here you can see that the source, for example, is our Mandrill system, which is an email system, or our HubSpot automation system, or again, our learning session doc. So lastly, let's go to the content engagement part, which is this tab. We're in the behavior reporting, then on site content, all pages. And here you can see from each page how many page views we got, unique page views we got, the average time spent on this page, and also how many people entered on this page, and what the bounce rate and exit rate was. So for example, for this one, the welcome page, which is our starting point of our doc, the entrance is 151, and almost more than half bounced on that. So that's maybe something we want to look into and improve. Then let's go to the analytic events, which is on the behavior tab as well, events, and then we go to pages. So let's see for the cover page, the welcome page, what kind of events we had. And then we have 3 types of events, which is scroll, how far they scrolled. Internal is an internal link, and the navigation bar. So you can see that the navigation bar isn't used a lot, but people mostly scroll or click on a link to another page, which is internal. So let's open up that one. And then you can see the button is used the most. One thing I would still need to explain is the depth of visits part. This you would need a little spreadsheet to do that, but I think it's a really helpful way to analyze your doc. So for example, if we go to our Foleon Analytics report, we can see that we have the unique visits, so unique sessions in here, and we have 211 unique visits over the total number of 299 doc visits. And this means that of those 299 visits, 211 have seen this page. And when you start to think like that and you calculate the difference, you can get a nice overview of how people move through your doc. So I've copied basically the numbers in here. So we have 299 visits and 211 unique visits here. And basically what we just calculated is we divide 211 by 299, and then we get a percentage of 70%. And we do this for every page. And once you create a graph from that, you can see how people generally move through your doc. Okay, so before we go to best practices and tips, I'd like to say a quick word on GA4. So because as you might know, this will be the default GA starting from July next year. The main difference between the current GA, which is called Universal Analytics, and GA4 is that GA4 is based on capturing events, whereas Universal Analytics is mostly based on sessions. This new setup gives GA more flexibility to not analyze only page views, but every type of interaction. So it's mostly also the step that Google Analytics takes to be a platform that doesn't only do web analytics, but also platform analytics. And though we as Foleon don't support it natively yet, meaning through the project settings, you can still install it through the remarketing field in a single doc or through Google Tag Manager. We've documented the steps to take, and I would recommend you to read it on our Help Center guide, which is linked in here, but you can also easily find it on learn.foleon.com. And with that, we've come to the end of this part of the webinar. I'd like to leave with a few best practices and tips. First, decide on the goal of your doc before you start to create it. What do you need your readers to do? Read the entire document or maybe just parts of it. Use Foleon Analytics for quick insights and GA for in-depth analysis. Do content experience research. So for example, ask a colleague to go through your new doc and try to spot the bottlenecks in your design or copy. Set up GA4 and play around with its new features. It's the new default GA, so make sure you're familiar with it, that you have data in it before July next year. One last tip, we also support marketing automation or CRM integrations, which is a great way to get data into those platforms. Integrate natively with HubSpot, Salesforce Pardot, Eloqua, and Marketo. And lastly, set up an integration with your CRM or marketing automation platform. These platforms often have their own tracking capabilities, and you might be able to add it to your Foleon Docs. That way you use Foleon Doc page views or events in your marketing automation. So for example, you can update your lead scoring system if they visited a certain page of your doc. We integrate with HubSpot, Salesforce Pardot, Eloqua, and Marketo natively. But if you have a different one that has tracking options that offers that as well, you can probably add it through a tag management solution like GTM. And for that, we also have a great guide on learn.foleon.com. Helps you set up GTM and also any third-party software that you might want to add to your Foleon Doc.
That was a very interesting lesson, Giel. There was so much information in there. Overwhelms me as a person to not be daily working in analytics, but I definitely picked up a lot. And for the audience, I've been with Foleon for less than 6 months. So I'm learning just as you are learning, and it's great to see you here. If you're like, oh, I got it, but I have doubts about certain parts or questions or something is unclear, let us know in the chat or in the question tab, because Giel and Veronica are online with us for at least another 10 minutes to go over it. So go ahead, type in your questions and we'll get to them shortly. And the ones we have received we'll get to soon. Giel, how was it for you to see your own lesson after having created it?
Yeah, it was fun. Kind of weird to see to hear yourself like that, but
nice. And Veronica, anything new for you in there?
Yeah, there was some really good information. One question that I actually had for Giel was the channel grouping. Does that automatically track with just the normal GA, or do you need UTM for that?
Yeah, good question. So Google Analytics is quite good at capturing that data, like the referrer data, where is it coming from? But if you really want to control everything, which I recommend you do, that adding UTM strings is the best way forward. It allows you to really granular control what bucket certain traffic is coming into. Because sometimes when you, for example, and this is quite technical, but if you go from an HTTP domain and there's a link to a HTTPS domain, I believe it was the case that Google then can't define the referrer. So there are a lot of like edge cases where the referrer gets lost.
Gotcha.
And that's why you should use UTMs.
Great. Does that answer your question, Veronica?
Yes, thanks.
That's great. Giel, I think there is a question in here that's for you. It's Roxanne Kramers. I'm going to show it on the screen. She asks, how come the number of visitors or sessions is different? And she asked that question at the moment in the lesson that you were just starting to show Google Analytics, and kind of like said, okay, and this you can also see in Foleon Analytics.
Yeah, I guess she's referring to the difference between Foleon Analytics and Google Analytics in terms of, for example, number of sessions. In Foleon Analytics, we call it visits. It's a good question. There's the way that we build Foleon Analytics is slightly different than Google Analytics, though it's quite similar. But again, also there are quite a few instances where Analytics might remember you as a user or might not remember you as a user. And there are a few things that differ between the systems. So they are different, but they should be roughly the same. And we also have a guide on learn.foleon.com that explains a few situations and how the data can differ between the two platforms. But in generally, they should be roughly the same.
That's interesting. And in terms of the link, the help articles Giel refers to right now and in his recorded lesson, I'll do my best to add them to the follow-up email so you get them in your inbox tonight, like later today or tomorrow. So we'll try to do that. Roxanne, if you have a follow-up question, feel free to kind of like just throw it out there. Julia, I see your chat, but there is no message, so welcome. But if you have a question, please resend that. There are no other questions at this moment. However, I did have one as well, because I thought the creation of the graph that you showed to see depth of visit super interesting. However, it is a bit of manual work, so I can imagine you don't want to be doing that too often. What kind of docs would you suggest to do that for?
Like we talked about, we talked about linear docs versus non-linear docs. So I think you can use that graph in both ways. So in linear docs, you can really see the flow because they most likely visit page from to page. With the non-linear docs, they might enter on page 3, they might enter on page 5, or they might go from page 1 to page 10. So in there, you can use the same graph, but it's more visualizing which pages were most visited. Cool.
Yeah, I do think that if you have a graph like that, it's super interesting. I would think there is value in it as well, in then being able to adapt the documents afterwards to optimize maybe flow of users, especially if you have a gate in your Foleon Doc or a form somewhere that you want to really make sure people go there.
Yeah.
All right. I'll put another question up on the street. Julia, thank you for asking this one. Could you kindly explain bounce rate and what percentage is good and bad?
Yeah, that's a good question and a fun one as well, because bounce rate is a really interesting metric, but it depends on how you interpret it. So I think in general, like 26 to roughly 40% is a good bounce rate. But you should also take into consideration what kind of traffic do you have. If you have a one page, obviously you're going to have a high bounce rate. But if you have, for example, paid advertising to one page in your Foleon Doc, and that page is a quite lengthy article, and then you can have a high bounce rate, which means, and I think it's part of the question was also explain bounce rate. So maybe I should start with that first. So bounce rate is a visitor that only saw one page. So it came in, saw one page, and then left. It bounced. So going back to my example, if you have a page that has a lengthy article and you have paid advertising to it, people land on it, get the information they need, and leave, which is a successful visit, you can still have a high bounce rate. However, if you have a linear doc, for example, people land on a cover and you need them to read every page, and the cover has a high bounce rate, meaning people leave after seeing that page. Well, that's something that's not good, and you have to improve.
That's great. Yeah, actually, indeed, taking into account what you want your reader to do and how you want them to navigate through your Foleon Doc is important in order to decide what to measure and which metrics are more relevant than others.
Yeah, exactly. I hope that answers the question for Julia.
I hope so too. If not, Julia, yeah, thumbs up. That's great. In the meantime, I have opened a poll and it's on your screen right now, probably on the top right if you're on a laptop or desktop. And the question is, what are your goals? What does success looks like for you, for your Foleon Docs? Are you purely focused on engagement, for example, average time on a page, or are you more interested in conversion, which could be, for example, form submissions? Let us know, click on your answer, and we look forward to seeing it. Also, if you have a final question, pop it into the chat real quick because we're close to wrapping it up. I'm going to quickly check if there are more questions. Nope, there isn't. The link to the next webinar is in the chat though, so that may be interesting. I'm going to show my slides again to remind you that this was the final live lesson of the summer series. We've really enjoyed it. We had a great time with you all, filling up this spare time on our calendar in the summer, and look forward to also providing you lots more useful content. These ones will continue to be available on demand on the URL video.foleon.com/webinars. And I will link that in the email afterwards. Also, if you're like, wow, just Foleon is super new to me, I haven't even been able to dive in, or maybe I have a coworker who's just getting started, there is a training webinar. So that's great to go to remind them about. So feel free to let them know. And then also this one, I guess, will be very interesting for you. It's the product update webinar. September 29th, we will have a product owner speaking to just share everything that has been recently released and is also going to be released. So if you're interested in staying up to date with the product, it would be great for you to join that webinar. Before we close up, I will quickly have a look at the results of the poll questions. I'm going to close it and show the results. Nope. Yep, there they are. We see that most people are interested in engagement, and then there is less interest in conversion, but there's interest for both, but definitely engagement is widely out there. Giel and Veronica, what do you think about that?
It's interesting.
Yeah, it's interesting. It's definitely not the answer that I was expecting, but yeah, good to know. And yeah, I wonder if maybe people, haven't considered different ways that they can use Foleon Docs for conversion. So if that is something that you want to learn more about, definitely reach out to any one of us or your CSM, because I think it's a powerful way to use Foleon.
That's great. Yeah, definitely. Always reach out whenever you have a question. Also, after the webinar, if something pops up, there is an amazing support team to help you out, and your CSM will always be there for you. I do think we're close to the end of this webinar. Any final thoughts before I wrap it up? No? Thank you so much for both being here, Veronica and Giel. Veronica, not too many questions for you, but it was great to have you online just as a backup to support the viewers of the webinar. And we love to have you later on one of our lessons or webinars at some later time. Giel, thank you. This was a great lesson, very informative. And for the viewers, it will be available afterwards if you want to rewatch the lesson. For now, I'd like to thank you all for having been online. Great to have you. Thank you also for your questions and answers to the poll question. If you have another minute of your day, feel free or please fill in the survey about this lesson, but also to share your thoughts and ideas for future lessons with us. We're going to jump out. Thank you all and have a great rest of your day and summer. Bye.